The mastermind behind the relentless campaign of assassination plots, coup attempts and destabilization efforts targeting Captain Ibrahim Traoré has at last been apprehended. Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, the former president of Burkina Faso, has officially been taken into custody. He was apprehended in Togo, a location where he mistakenly believed he had found sanctuary, and has since been extradited to Burkina Faso authorities to answer for his grave offenses against the revolution. Make no mistake, my friends, this development is far more significant than just another political arrest. What we are witnessing is the complete unmasking of a malevolent conspiracy designed to assassinate one of Africa's most valiant young leaders and forcibly drag Burkina Faso back into the tumultuous grip of neo-colonial subjugation. Allow me to detail the precise events as they unfolded and explain exactly why this story demands the undivided attention of every person across the African continent. Merely 1 week ago, the nation of Burkina Faso was just hours away from the tragic loss of Captain Ibrahim Traoré. I am referring to a meticulously orchestrated assassination, a heinous act that would have irrevocably altered the entire course of West African history. The architects of the coup had designated a specific date and time, January 3, 2026, at precisely 11 p.m. Their objective was singular: to eliminate the head of state, either through a close-range shooting or by detonating explosives planted at his personal residence. However, the planned bloodshed was not intended to end with that single horrific act. Their plot included the systematic execution of other key military leaders and civilian officials who were loyal supporters of the revolution. Burkina Faso's Minister of Security, Mr. Mahamadou Sana, appeared on national television to expose every single shocking detail of this treacherous scheme. He confirmed that on January 3, 2026, at 11 p.m., a comprehensive attempt to destabilize the entire nation was scheduled to commence. This far-reaching operation was designed to be executed through a coordinated series of targeted assassinations aimed at both civilian and military authorities. The plan was to begin with the neutralization of Comrade Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the head of state and president of Faso, through either a point-blank assassination or an operation involving high explosives at his residence. Following this initial strike, a subsequent operation was planned to completely disable the nation's primary drone base and facilitate a ground-based military intervention from external forces. For reasons of confidentiality and to avoid compromising the integrity of the ongoing investigations, further details are being withheld. However, we will name the principal architect of this conspiracy. This individual is the former Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba. He was assigned the critical mission of designing and orchestrating the entire plot, which included seeking and mobilizing necessary funds, as well as recruiting both civilian and military personnel. The military recruits were specifically tasked with enlisting other soldiers into the conspiracy and forming specialized action groups, each with its own clearly defined hostile mission. Meanwhile, the civilian conspirators were responsible for mobilizing segments of the population and their followers, so that once the military action was complete, they could rally public support to legitimize the coup. Additionally, another vital piece of information that must be shared with the public pertains to the primary source of the operation's funding. It must be noted that a substantial portion of this funding originated from Côte d'Ivoire, with the most recent transaction for this operation totaling 70 million. I also want to strongly emphasize that arrests are still being made and the complete dismantling of these treacherous networks is actively underway at this moment. And in the interest of keeping the nation fully informed, we will be providing the media with video confessions obtained during the interrogations of several key figures involved in this plot. Now, here is what sets this situation dramatically apart from your typical government press announcements. The authorities brought the actual coup plotters onto live national television to confess their crimes before the eyes of the entire country. The audacity of such transparency is truly remarkable. There was no concealment, no attempt at a cover-up, only the unvarnished truth broadcast for every Burkina Faso citizen to witness. The plot itself was devastatingly sophisticated. Following the planned assassination of Traoré, these criminals intended to completely neutralize Burkina Faso's drone launch facility, a critical move that would have crippled the nation's capacity to defend itself just before they signaled for external forces to begin a full-scale ground invasion. That's correct, you heard me perfectly. Foreign forces were on standby, ready to invade a sovereign African nation, while internal traitors worked to unlock the gates from within. At this point in the narrative, the story takes an absolutely explosive and deeply personal turn. Among the plotters paraded before the cameras was Sergeant Major Salo Yawayo, a serving member of the Republican Guard, the elite unit explicitly tasked with ensuring the president's personal safety. This soldier's sworn duty was to protect Captain Traoré's life. Instead, he was recruited by Damiba, operating from Togo, with the specific mission to end that very life. I ask you to consider the profound depth of that betrayal. The very individual positioned closest to you, the person you entrust with your survival, was bought and paid for by your most bitter enemy. Approximately 2 weeks ago, I received several calls from an unrecognized number, and the individual on the line initiated a conversation with me in the following manner. He asked, "How are you?" I replied, "I am doing fine." He then asked about the situation in Ouagadougou, and I responded that everything was calm. He pressed further, "Is there any news over there?" Once again, I said everything is fine. He then posed the question, "Do you know who this is?" I admitted, to be honest, I do not know who is calling." He responded, "Oh really, very well, this is Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba on the line." I immediately replied, Understood. My utmost respects to you, sir." He then concluded the brief call by saying, "Good, we will certainly speak with you again at a later time." And with that, our entire conversation for that specific day came to a definitive end. Then, 2 or 3 days after that initial call, Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo contacted me once more. He began by saying he is a soldier just like us, like me, and that he understands that conditions are not easy. He continued, "But one does not ask. But I have a specific task that I need you to carry out for me." I was informed that the payment would be ready for collection either the next day or the day after from an adjutant named Margie, whom I was directed to see in person. I felt it was necessary to convey my profound gratitude for the exceptionally decisive action he had just undertaken. Moreover, he explicitly stated that Adjutant Margie would provide a thorough briefing on several vital matters and furnish me with further critical instructions. Once our conversation was complete, he terminated the call. It was at this moment that he revealed the entire operation to me, clarifying that it was a plan for a coup d'etat and that he was depending on me to mobilize armed men. My task was to guarantee the successful execution of the government overthrow, a responsibility I tacitly agreed to without objection. That was our final arrangement. On the following day, when I was scheduled to retrieve my consignment, I initiated a call to L.H. Saranda. He advised me that he was currently traveling out of the city, but promised to get in touch with me as soon as he returned. So for a time, that is how the situation remained. Upon his return from the trip, it was Uncle Winga Ali, a businessman and professional based in Sena, who reached out to me with instructions to make contact with him. He acted swiftly to expedite the arrangements for my collection. This was to ensure that I could promptly receive the compensation I had earned without any additional delays. I need to state in the clearest possible terms that the moment I achieved a full and unambiguous understanding of the true purpose of this operation, and the role I was being maneuvered to play, which amounted to a massive national destabilization plot, I immediately took action. I adopted a firm and unyielding position by proactively contacting my most dedicated and loyal men, the very individuals in whom I place my absolute trust. And it was precisely within this crucial time frame, specifically during the period when El Haj Sakandari was conveniently outside the country's borders, that I executed a series of swift and essential countermeasures. I carried out my responsibilities with diligence, and I wish to clarify for the record that I was in fact the officially appointed duty chief at the Republican station on the critical date of December 31st, a day of immense significance. Consequently, a meeting was organized for me to see El Had Sekande at 8 o'clock in the evening inside his office at Pali to retrieve a specific delivery. When I departed to collect this package, I utilized my personal vehicle, which was equipped with 2 PKM machine guns and a substantial amount of ammunition. It was a very large supply of ammunition, totaling 4 full boxes. Once I reached the designated location, my orders were to get in touch with Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba to formally receive the package and be briefed on all the necessary particulars. During this pivotal arranged meeting, it was precisely at the moment I was awaiting the crucial telephone call that I was suddenly apprehended. This single development profoundly and completely altered the entire course of my life. But the confession that truly seized my attention was delivered by Captain Prosper Kudiati of the Burkina Faso Air Force. His assignment was to manage the coordination of helicopter deployments during the coup. The details he provided are truly remarkable. During the planning phase, Kudayati posed an absolutely critical question. What is our plan of action if we launch the operation and the general population floods the streets in protest? How are we supposed to contain the Wyans? For those who are not aware, the Wyans are the dedicated revolutionary citizens who maintain a vigilant watch at every major roundabout in Ouagadougou night after night to safeguard their revolution from any and all enemies, whether internal or external. Kayati was fully aware that these individuals would not simply stay indoors while foreign-backed traitors attempted to dismantle their nation's sovereignty. These are the very same citizens who have supported Traoré through every hardship and have made it perfectly clear that the independence of Burkina Faso is absolutely not up for negotiation. And what was Damiba's reply to him? He reportedly said not to worry, claiming the people would not come out to resist. Can you even comprehend that level of arrogance? Damiba, sitting comfortably in his Togolese exile, genuinely believed the people of Burkina Faso would passively accept another coup, another puppet for president, and another return to French neo-colonial control. He fundamentally misunderstood the profound changes that have swept through Burkina Faso. This is not the same nation he fled in 2022. The populace has been awakened. They are now conscious of their power. They are now certain of their enemy. Now it is time to discuss the finances, as this is where the neo-colonial influence becomes undeniable. Minister Sana has revealed that the financial support for this coup attempt originated from various foreign sources, with a particular emphasis on Côte d'Ivoire. Investigators successfully traced a final monetary transfer of roughly 70 million CFA francs. That figure equates to approximately 125,000 United States dollars, which was specifically allocated for this assassination mission. I ask you to let the full weight of that information settle in. Capital was flowing from Côte d'Ivoire, a nation that hosts French military bases and fosters intimate connections with Paris, to fund an operation designed to eliminate a Pan-African leader who had expelled France from Burkina Faso. This is not conjecture or theory. These are documented facts that have been released by the Burkinabe government, which possesses the evidence to substantiate these claims. This is the exact same strategic playbook they have utilized all over Africa for many decades. They begin by identifying leaders who will not yield to their authority. They then proceed to finance internal opposition groups. They orchestrate coups and political assassinations. Finally, they install compliant puppet leaders who will grant them access to our resources while our own people are left to suffer. But this time, their scheme was an absolute failure. On this occasion, the conspiracy was uncovered before its architects could bring it to fruition. The subject was apprehended on January 2, 2026, in connection with a failed attempt to destabilize the nation's current administration. My involvement began approximately 2 weeks prior when I received a call from Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Sandaogo Damiba, who was using a telephone number originating from Togo. Following several unsuccessful attempts to reach me, I finally answered, at which point he identified himself and instructed me to install the Zangi application, a request with which I immediately complied. Over the subsequent period, he prompted me to sign into Zangi on several occasions merely to verify my presence without offering any additional information. It is crucial to mention that an associate of Hamida had possessed my phone number for a significant length of time. One day, this very same associate of Hamida's reached out to me to inquire if I was a user of the Signal application. I confirmed to him that I did indeed have the application. He then proceeded to inform me that another individual would be making contact via the Signal platform. True to his word, a person sent by Colonel Hamida, who identified himself as King David, did contact me. I must state for the record that this King David is actually Captain Ouedraogo David from the 14th promotion, who is currently based in Ghana. In the time leading up to the evening of December the 31st, David and I engaged in numerous discussions framed as exchanges between the perspectives of the elders and the youth. Regarding the aforementioned Hamida, he would contact me frequently through written messages and phone calls, but he always communicated using heavily coded language. He consistently spoke in parables, asking vague questions about whether people were in good spirits, and other such things, never explicitly revealing from the beginning that he was orchestrating a specific project. I also feel it is necessary to clarify a critical detail regarding my conversations on Signal with King David. Captain Ouedraogo had instructed that we enable the disappearing messages feature, setting the timer to a very short 30-second duration. Furthermore, whenever Colonel Damiba sent me a message on Zangi, he would delete it if I had not viewed it within a 10-minute window. On the evening of December the 31st, Hamida's associate contacted me again to inform me that the king would require my signature on a document for a package, but he refused to specify its nature or contents. The king then arranged for me to sign this document, and upon doing so, I was provided with 2 separate phone numbers. One number was for the person from whom I was tasked to collect something, and the second number belonged to the individual to whom I was instructed to deliver it. It was at this stage that I involved my brother Soro Robert. He made contact with the specified individual and successfully retrieved the package in question. I want to state unequivocally that my brother Robert was simply acting as a courier for me in this matter. When I took possession of the package before it could be delivered to its final destination, I made the decision to open it. Inside, I found nothing but a substantial sum of money totaling 8 million. I consciously decided to seize 3 million from the total amount before having the package with the remaining 5 million delivered to the interested party by my brother Robert. Hamida's associate later wrote to inform me that he would call on the evening of January 2nd regarding a mission he intended to assign to me. As promised, on the evening of January 2nd, that same associate called and revealed that the money in the package was intended to be shared between myself and David. He then disclosed the chilling objective of the mission he wanted to entrust to me to assassinate the individual known only as the pastor. It must be understood that this pastor is in fact Captain Pacer, the commanding officer of the Sapane drone base. The strategy, as explained by Hamida's associate, was that with the commander eliminated, the entire drone fleet would be rendered inoperative, which would then allow their ground units to take action. The Sapane drone base was identified as the single greatest obstacle to their entire operation. To fully grasp the gravity of this development, it is essential to remember precisely who Paul-Henri Damiba is and why his apprehension carries so much weight. This is the individual who seized power by overthrowing Burkina Faso's civilian government in January 2022, making bold claims that he would restore security and stability. Instead, the situation severely deteriorated under his leadership as the jihadist insurgency intensified and the frequency of violent attacks increased dramatically. These failures led to growing suspicions that Damiba was either profoundly incompetent or far worse complicit in perpetuating the instability to serve foreign interests. It was these circumstances that prompted Captain Ibrahim Traoré to remove him from power in September of 2022. Traoré introduced a fundamentally different vision for the country, one centered on genuine sovereignty, robust partnerships with fellow African nations over former colonial masters, and a new willingness to explore alliances with nations like Russia that challenge Western hegemony in Africa. The people of the nation recognized this profound difference almost immediately and rallied behind their new leader with an unprecedented and passionate display of support. But Damiba did not accept his removal quietly. From his exile in Togo, he has spent more than 2 years relentlessly plotting, scheming, financing assassination attempts, and coordinating with external forces to destroy Traoré's government. This most recent conspiracy was just the latest in a long series of destabilization efforts. On every previous occasion, Captain Traoré has survived and persevered. With each failed plot, the revolution has only grown stronger in its resolve, and now finally the principal architect of all this chaos has been apprehended. Togo's arrest and subsequent extradition of Damiba represents a momentous turning point in this protracted struggle. President Faure Gnassingbé's government has historically cultivated cordial relations with France and other Western powers, which begs the question, why would they decide to hand over Damiba now? One possibility is that they have calculated that the diplomatic liability of harboring known coup plotters has simply become too costly to bear. It is also possible they recognize that nations across Africa are increasingly and vocally demanding accountability for these types of destabilization campaigns. Or perhaps they have simply seen the writing on the wall that the alliance of Sahel states formed by Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger represents a formidable new power bloc in the region that cannot be disregarded. Regardless of the precise reasoning, the message being conveyed by this action is unequivocally clear. Nations across the African continent are coming to the critical realization that the coup plotter you shelter within your borders today is very likely to become the very operative who destabilizes your own government tomorrow. The concept of regional solidarity is decisively moving beyond mere rhetoric spoken at continental summits. It is now transforming into a tangible operational reality with genuine consequences. My fellow Africans, the apprehension of Damiba represents something far more significant than the criminal actions of a single individual. This event symbolizes a momentous and crucial shift that is currently unfolding across our entire continent. For far too long, powerful external forces have skillfully manipulated our internal politics, provided the financing for our devastating conflicts, and conducted their affairs with absolute and unchallenged impunity. Historically, leaders who dared to challenge or run contrary to the interests of Western powers have often found themselves overthrown in sudden coups. They have been assassinated or systematically destabilized, all while the individuals responsible found safe haven in neighboring countries shielded by the convenient veils of diplomatic immunity and quiet regional complicity. However, the remarkable survival of Captain Ibrahim Traoré and the successful capture of Damiba serve as undeniable proof that this long-standing era of foreign interference is finally drawing to a close. It demonstrates that revolutionary leadership, when fully supported by the mobilization of the populace, possesses the resilience to withstand even the most sophisticated and well-funded destabilization campaigns. We saw this strength in the citizens keeping a watchful vigil in Ouagadougou and in the countless others who rallied together to courageously defy the attempted coup. This victory was also secured by the diligent intelligence services that successfully uncovered the conspiracy and by the crucial regional allies who offered their unwavering support when it was most needed. These combined efforts represent the true foundations of genuine national sovereignty. And so, as Damiba prepares to face trial in Burkina Faso on grave charges of treason, conspiracy to murder, and financing terrorism, we recognize the broader struggle continues. The violent and relentless jihadist insurgency continues to persist across the region. Our economic challenges remain incredibly intense, significantly worsened by the weight of Western sanctions and relentless diplomatic pressure. The adversaries of true African independence have certainly not surrendered their cause. On the contrary, they are merely regrouping behind the scenes, strategically recalculating their methods and searching for new vulnerabilities to exploit. But they must now contend with a new reality. They know the people of Africa are watching attentively, that African leaders are coordinating their actions, and that the consequences for engaging in destabilization are becoming tangibly real. This emerging reality is the very Africa our ancestors fought for, a continent that is united, perpetually vigilant, and absolutely unwilling to surrender its hard-won sovereignty for anyone's interests but our very own. The ongoing revolution in Burkina Faso continues to move forward, and with criminals like Damiba now facing the full measure of justice, it finds its resolve and its momentum growing stronger with each passing day.